Namaskar. Welcome back to my channel. I am Rishraj Gautam, data analyst and the founder of this channel. And in this particular video, we will be talking about the basic economics of demand and price. Our focus will be understanding the market. Okay. So let's start with understanding the fundamental relationships. That is, what is demand? So demand is quantity of a good consumers are willing to pay at different prices. So at a certain price, how much quantity a consumer is willing to buy? That is called the demand. Now, what is the law of demand? So we know that as the price increases, the quantity demanded will decrease and the vice versa, right? That is, if price decreases, something is become cheaper, then the demand will rise, right? To setting it in a picture, let's take an example. So we'll take example of tomato prices. Okay. So when tomato prices rise from 40 rupees per kg to 80 rupees per kg in market, what happens? The household buys fewer tomatoes, right? And the restaurants also reduces tomato uses in their dishes. Correct? So that is the impact of the prices being raised. We can notice that the demand decreases. So the key insights here is price act as both signal and incentives in the markets. Now let's understand it by visualizing this relationship. So there are multiple type of relationship, and the first is individual demand. That is a single consumer's preference. Correct? How or what quantity a single consumer is willing to buy. Then there comes the market demand, that is sum of all individual demands. That will make a market, right? Then if we try to figure out the relationship between these, then we notice that it is typically downward sloping. Okay. So again, let's understand it by example. And the best example is mobile data plans, right? So at 299 rupees per month, let's say we have 10 million subscribers. Our company has 10 million subscribers. Like if we talk about Jio, okay. So when the recharge was 299 per month, there will be 10 million subscribers. But as the rate increases, let's say 599 per month, the subscribers become 4 million. So again, we can notice that the price increase, the demand decrease. How it will look like on the graph? So let's say we have a price on y-axis, quantity on x-axis. The curve will look like this, and this curve is known as demand curve. Correct? Now let's try to understand the mathematical representation of this demand. So if we try to imagine demand as a function of price, so our demand price curve will look like this, where this A is the maximum demand at price equals to 0. So if this P is the price, A is the maximum demand if this P goes to 0, and this B is price sensitivity. So, and this DP is basically our demand. So this is the mathematically how we can represent our demand relationship, right? Demand curve, where A is the maximum demand, or we can say that this is the market size, right? So it is basically at the price 0, what is the maximum quantity that people are willing to buy? That is called the market size or market demand. And then by the rising price, how this quantity changes, this B, that is price sensitivity. Okay, let's understand it by example. Let's say example of a vegetable seller whose demand function look like this. Now, if it say what is the demand at 10 rupees per kg, so demand will look like something this: 1000 minus 20 into 10, that is equals to 800. And what will be the demand at 30 rupees per kg? So again you will see that the demand will look like this: 400. So the critical concept here is known as elasticity, which is how responsive quantity is to the price changes. How price is, when we are changing the price, how our demand is changing. Now let's try to figure out by two different views of this demand. So as I said, there are two views: market demand and an individual demand, or I can say a single seller demand. So when I talk about the market demand, it talks about all sellers combined. And if I talk about the sensitivity of a price, it is relatively inelastic. Example, total petrol demand. That will be inelastic, not very much sensitive if we talk about market, right? But what if we talk about single seller demand? So single seller means for individual business, the demand for an individual business. And this will be more elastic, right? Example, a specific petrol pump. So if prices goes up, let's say at a single seller, then most consumer will go try to find another petrol pump. Let's say they will think that there the prices will be cheaper or something like that. How will the curve look like? So if we have price P and Q here, then this will be our market, right? And you can see that it is relatively inelastic. And this curve, which is an elastic curve, it will be for a single seller. And the curve will look like this. So let's compare these two perspectives. So we will talk about elasticity. So for a market demand, the elasticity is basically less, or we can say the price sensitivity is less in market, for market. And for single seller, it will be more sensitive, more elastic. If we talk about substitute, no close substitute to market, right? There is hardly alternatives of a market. But for a single seller, there will be many competitors. Example, total wheat demand in India. It is the market and it will be not much sensitive, right? But for a single seller, the demand for farmers X quantity of wheat, it will be more elastic. And the last is control. So in market demand, external factors dominates, right? External factors, let's say there are wheat crisis, then demand will be huge. But for a single seller, its own pricing gets affected, right? So demand is affected by how that particular individual seller has set his price. So if we talk about a practical insight, so a Kirana store faces different demand constraint than the entire FMCG market, and which is a fact, right? So let's talk about the key takeaways. And the very first was demand and price share inverse relationship, right? That if the demand goes up, price will go down. Second thing, demand curve visualize this relationship, right? Demand curve, the smooth curve visualizes this demand curve relationship, demand and price relationship. The mathematical models help us predict market behavior. Specific seller demand is more elastic than the entire market demand, right? Real world application where it will help. So, understanding this particular concept of demand and price curves will help us in pricing strategies for businesses or government policy formulation or personal financial decision. So, I hope this session was helpful and thank you.